Hi everyone, and welcome to week 12. So by this point in the semester, we've covered all of the basic skills you'll need to create your final work for Assessment 3, giving you these next 2 weeks to work on your assessment and seek any feedback to shape it into something that you're happy with. In light of that, next week's videos will be a checklist of sorts to round up everything that we've looked at so far, and a discussion of what specifically you should be including in the assessment for the requirements and then to get some better marks. So then in light of that, for this week, while you're just working on your assessments, I thought I'd use this week's video tutorials to revisit audio effects, as well as address some out-of-the-box ways that we can source vocal material if you're looking to work with vocal audio samples for your melody construction. Particularly in light of the Acid Xpress users missing out on the GarageBand library of loops. It can be pretty difficult to find material. So starting with audio effects, we did address audio effects briefly in week 4. There's an extended video tutorial in that week if you'd like a full revision. But basically the short version is that Acid Xpress doesn't allow us in this free version to use audio effects. If you're invested in Acid Xpress, you could feel free to purchase it, but it's in no way required. And again, just like the other two assessments, this final work won't be assessing the use of audio effects, so you won't lose any marks if you don't use them, you won't necessarily gain any marks if you do use them. The criteria doesn't account for audio effects. But still, given that, this is a course about digital music making, and audio effects play a vital role in that process, so we'll look again quickly at one way we can do it here to get around Acid Xpress's restriction. So yes, first things first, we can't use audio effects in Acid Xpress, but as first discussed in the week 4 video tutorial, we can download a separate program called Mixpad, which is just another free digital music making software. It looks like this, and the trial version of this program does still allow us to use effects, though the rest of it's a little harder to use. So what that means, if we would still experiment with effects in our piece in Acid Xpress, is that we have two different options. One, we can put a clip into Mixpad first. So maybe we found a loop or sample that we want to use. We can in Mixpad apply an effect to it, then export that clip as a new loop, so with the effect applied, and back into Acid. So in short, put a clip in Mixpad, put an effect on it, export it, then put it in Acid. Now that process would be useful if you're trying to experiment with effects during the actual construction of your piece while you're trying to write it. But unfortunately, it doesn't make the auditioning process very easy, as you'll have to try a different audio effect in Mixpad, export it again to put in Acid, and then try it in context to see if it works. So obviously repeating that process will be quite time consuming. The other way we could approach that, the second process, if we're not going to use effects to actually help us write the piece, is to finish a project. And this is just a project from one of the previous weeks on using MIDI. It sounds like this for a reference point. But yeah, say that's our finished piece. What we can then do is export each track individually in its full finished duration, put each track into Mixpad, and then think of Mixpad as our final mixer. So with each track of our project in Mixpad, we could then experiment with effects on each different track in our piece to get something we're happy with and then export the whole piece from Mixpad. But again, just a few things about that process. If we try to use Acid's actual feature for exporting each track individually, so if we come to File, Render As, and then try to check the box Save each track as a separate file, you'll again be given the prompt to buy the full version. So of course one thing we can do to get around that, and I guess an oversight on the part of Acid Xpress, is that we can simply solo a track and then export the entire project. So if we solo this first track, File, Render As, give it a name, and then export somewhere you'll be able to access, just like your desktop or something. And then what that will have created, if I just minimize all these other windows, is an MP3 of just that track. So then if I just play that track on its own, we'll have just that first track from the project, and then to save time, I've already done it with the other two. So these two as well. We'll just be that track on their own. So then with those tracks and our project finished, we can put each into Mixpad and apply effects from there. So first of all, just a reminder I forgot to mention, you can find Mixpad here on this site. It's a safe download and it's just the first result if you just Google Mixpad. And again, it's a free trial, but only for a limited time. And what I mean by that is that once you've got your tracks in here, it won't actually let you export the project into an audio file if that trial timer has expired. So if that's the case, if you've already downloaded Mixpad long ago, and your trial has expired for that for any reason, you unfortunately won't be able to use it to export any audio that you've applied effects to, but you will still be able to come in and at least experiment with effects to learn how to use them. But yeah, otherwise, if you've just downloaded Mixpad for this first time, again from this site, you'll be able to put all your tracks in, apply effects, export the whole thing with the effects that you've applied, and then upload that as your assessment. But now just one more time, because I want to avoid confusion, it's not necessary to do any of this. You don't have to use audio effects in your assessment. This is just for anyone who does want to play with them and is restricted by Acid Xpress. So now in Mixpad, all we do to get our tracks in is go Clip, Load Clip from File, and then select each of the tracks that you've created. And then what we'll have, if I just press play, is our same full piece from Acid, but now in a context where we can play with effects. Which will hear everything's been preserved. Fine solid. And generally your balance and mix will be maintained across the two programs, so you shouldn't have to remix too much in this program. Just be wary that if you apply effects, you may need to change the level of a track now to account for any increased gain or loudness. So now with that, just a reminder on how effects in this program work. And again, it is covered in the week 4 video tutorial where this was first introduced. But just to have a quick look again, say we took this drum track and soloed it. Say we're looking for an echo or a delay effect, we can come up and select echo. And this will open up the effects chain automatically. We can see here it's for track 3, which is our drums. And all this effects chain is a list of the applied effects, as well as a list to the left of it of effects we're able to add. So now we'll try the drums with that echo applied. And of course, if you decide that's too much, you can change some of these parameters, you can try some of the different presets, or you can go ahead and try any of the other effects here, something like reverb maybe. And I'll just turn echo off. You can do that without removing it from the chain to keep your settings. We'll put in something noticeable like a bathroom maybe. And of course you can change those parameters again, experiment with any different effects you'd like to try, especially applied to melody because you can get some interesting results. And that's even without actually changing the pitch of the melody or transposing it anyway. Sometimes applying some reverb or an interesting type of distortion or flanger effect can make a melody just as iconic as the actual notes chosen. So definitely feel free to experiment if you're interested. But again, just remember you won't actually be able to export project as audio file from Mixpad if the trial has run out. So coming back to it now, the second thing I'd like to address is some other ways that you can find vocal material if you're looking to work with vocal audio samples as your source of melody. So the packs available on Blackboard don't really have any vocal loops, and if you go to sites like Looperman, it's not particularly easy to find anything usable. So because of that, one good source for vocal material, if you haven't thought to try yet, is to go to YouTube and to search for a cappella or vocal-only covers, because plenty of these actually have pretty high production value, and then you can download the audio, put it in Acid as a starting point for the melody, and then cut it up, rearrange it, and transpose it in interesting ways to create a new melody. Even if you isolate a particular note or two that you thought was performed particularly well, and then basically use that as a sample that you'll copy and transpose to actually build a melody totally from scratch. Yeah, so obviously the quality of these covers can range drastically from something recorded on a phone to something actually recorded with a professional mic setup and then produced later, so with a little bit of reverb applied, with some EQing done, and etc. And even if you don't have a specific style in mind, if you search something like a cappella vocal cover, which just means without instruments, or even just vocals only cover, you should find plenty of usable material. So we'll have a quick listen to this first.
Sweet dreams are made of these. Who am I to disagree?
And yeah, because that's only vocals, there's no other instruments, that's highly usable. We can download it, throw it in our project, and then use it to create material. If you didn't want something that was 2 voices or a harmony, you could scout through the song to find something that was a single line.
Who am I to disagree?
And this is the same process as looking through loops. You'll scout through the song and audition different parts to find something you think is usable, or that you could at least alter or develop into something usable. So then in the same way, you might look for other videos. This one's slightly lower production value with not as much applied, but it's still recorded with a decent amount of professionalism, you can see from his mic setup here. And you still get a good, clean quality recording without the interference of instruments. So we'll listen.
Baby, you're all that I want. When you're lying here in my arms, I find it hard to believe we're in heaven.
And again, you could download that, use some of it or all of it, use particular things you thought were well performed, or that would be interesting with an effect applied to them. But again, once we've found something we've liked, pull the audio from YouTube and then drag it into your project, like this. And I'll just solo that track.
Sweet dreams are made of this.
And then in the same way that we looked at in the week 9 video tutorials about using audio samples to create melody, you could isolate individual notes and rearrange them and transpose, etc. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some new avenues to look for vocal material if that's what you're considering. Otherwise, an instrumental melody, whether using audio samples or MIDI programming, is generally a little easier to work with. So it's not necessary to use vocals, it's just an artistic choice. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a bit more to experiment with. But again, the focus of these next 2 weeks now is just working on your third assessment. We have all the basic skills covered, and then next week we'll look at an assessment checklist to prepare your submission, and then summarize all we've learned in the course. So if you have any questions about this, or particularly about the approaching assessment, please don't hesitate to ask in any of the forums or come to the online chat. I'll be more than happy to help. And then on top of that, feel free to share any of your work in progress on this third assessment if you'd like any feedback. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks.